The ruins of Vorak 5 stretched endlessly beneath the burning red sky. Broken towers, shattered metal walls, and rusted weapons lay scattered like the remains of a forgotten war. The planet had once been the heart of the Xal'Zur Dominion, an ancient and powerful alien empire. But that empire was long gone, destroyed in battles that had faded into legend. Now, Vorak 5 was a graveyard, a place where only scavengers and researchers dared to walk. And today, Lieutenant David Carter was one of them. Carter adjusted his helmet as he stepped into the remains of a vast chamber. The air was thick with dust, and the faint glow of his visor scanner showed old alien symbols carved into the walls. His mission was simple: investigate the last known location of the Xal'Zur war beasts. The Xal'Zur had been famous for creating living weapons, massive biomechanical war creatures, more terrifying than any machine. One of them, the greatest of them all, was rumored to still exist here, locked away in an ancient stasis field. Carter's boots crunched against the stone as he walked forward. Around him, a team of alien researchers moved cautiously, scanning the ruins with nervous glances. They were afraid, and for good reason. At the center of the chamber stood a massive metal cage, covered in thick, glowing energy barriers. Inside it, barely visible through the blue light, was a beast unlike anything Carter had ever seen. It was gigantic, almost 4 meters tall even in its crouched position. Thick, armored plating covered its dark, battle-worn body. Sharp, jagged spines ran along its back, and its head was shaped like a massive wolf's skull, but with glowing red eyes that pulsed faintly in the darkness. This was a creature built for war, one that had once torn through entire armies. The researchers whispered among themselves. "We should leave it alone." One of them, a nervous-looking reptilian alien, muttered. "This thing killed thousands in the war. If it wakes up, it will kill again." Carter didn't respond. He stepped closer, studying the creature through the energy field. It wasn't moving. Its massive chest rose and fell in slow, controlled breaths. It was alive, but asleep, trapped in time, waiting. Then it opened its eyes. A ripple of panic spread through the researchers. Some stepped back, clutching their scanners as if they would protect them. But Carter held his ground. The beast's red eyes locked onto him. For a moment, neither moved. Then the creature growled, a deep, rumbling sound that made the walls tremble. The energy barriers flickered slightly, as if reacting to the beast's presence. "Fascinating," one of the scientists whispered. "Even after all these years, it still responds to movement." Carter didn't just see a mindless monster. He saw something else. This thing, this war dog, wasn't just an animal. It was thinking, calculating, watching him with an intelligence that most people refuse to acknowledge. Slowly, Carter took off his helmet. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The researchers panicked. "What are you doing?" one of them shouted. "It will mark you as prey." But Carter ignored them. He knew fear only made creatures like this more dangerous. He took a step forward, his gaze steady. "You can see me, can't you?" he said softly. His voice was calm, firm. The beast's ears twitched. It tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes narrowing. It understood him. For the first time in centuries, someone was looking at it not with fear, but with recognition. A creature like this wasn't just a weapon. It was a soldier, left behind by a war that had long since ended. Carter placed a hand on the energy barrier, feeling it hum beneath his fingers. "You were abandoned, weren't you?" The war dog didn't move, but something in its gaze softened, just for a moment. The researchers, still frozen in fear, couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of them, a bird-like alien, swallowed hard. "You're insane, human. You can't tame a monster like that." Carter glanced back, his expression unreadable. "Maybe it's not the monster you think it is." The war dog's eyes glowed brighter. And then it spoke. A deep, ancient voice, rough and mechanical, yet clear as a war drum. "Who are you?" The chamber fell into stunned silence. Carter smiled slightly. "I'm Carter, and I think you and I have a lot to talk about." The war dog stared at him for a long moment. Then, ever so slowly, it lowered its head, a gesture of acknowledgement. And in that moment, Carter knew this wasn't just a mission anymore. This was the beginning of something much bigger. The silence in the ancient chamber was heavy. Dust floated in the air, caught in the faint glow of the stasis field that still flickered around the war beast. The alien researchers stood frozen, their eyes wide with shock. It had spoken. A creature that had been locked away for centuries, believed to be nothing more than a mindless war machine, had just spoken. Lieutenant David Carter kept his hand pressed against the barrier, his eyes locked onto the war dog's glowing red gaze. "Who are you?" the deep, rumbling voice had asked again, this time with more strength. Carter took a slow breath. "I'm Carter," he repeated. "A soldier, like you." The war beast's massive head tilted slightly, as if studying him. Its armor-plated body remained still, but its glowing eyes flickered with something deeper, something ancient. One of the researchers, a small reptilian alien named Dr. Freelich, took a cautious step forward. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Talzer war beasts were bred for destruction. They had no true minds of their own." Carter glanced at him. "Looks like you were wrong." Freelich swallowed hard. His clawed hands tightened around his scanner, but he didn't argue. Carter turned back to the war dog. "What's your name?" The beast was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice rough like grinding stone, it spoke. "Korixar." The name echoed through the chamber, carrying weight, carrying history. The researchers flinched. That name was in the records. Korixar had been one of the most feared war beasts in the Xalzur Dominion. He had led armies, torn through entire fleets. And yet, here he was now, locked in a cage, forgotten by time. Carter felt a strange sense of understanding in his chest. He had read stories about soldiers being abandoned after wars, leaders being cast aside when they were no longer needed. Maybe in some way, this war dog was no different. He exhaled and made a decision. "Lower the stasis field." A wave of panic spread through the researchers. "Are you insane?" one of them screeched. "If we release it, it will kill us all." But Carter didn't back down. He looked straight into Korixar's eyes. "You won't hurt me, will you?" The war beast stared at him. Then, slowly, it shook its head. That was enough for Carter. "Lower it. Now." Dr. Verlick hesitated, looking at his colleagues. None of them moved. No one wanted to be responsible for unleashing the war beast. Carter stepped forward, pulling out his command tablet. He was the ranking officer on this mission. His word was final. He entered the override code. A loud hiss filled the chamber as the glowing energy field around Korixar flickered. The air grew thick with tension. Then, the barrier dropped. For a moment, nothing happened. Korixar remained perfectly still, his massive form crouched in the dim light. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he lifted his head and stretched, his metal-plated spine cracking from centuries of stillness. The researchers backed away instantly, some scrambling behind old stone pillars, others gripping their weapons and shaking hands. But Carter stood firm. Korixar's glowing red eyes locked onto him. And then he took a step forward. The ground shook beneath his massive paws. Dust fell from the ceiling. His sharp claws scraped against the ancient floor, leaving deep grooves in the stone. Carter felt his heart pounding, but he didn't move. He couldn't show fear. Korixar came closer. His breath was heavy, warm, almost like a low growl. The spiked plating along his back shimmered in the dim light. Then he lowered his head slightly. A silent test. Carter raised his hand. Slowly, carefully, he placed his palm against the massive creature's armored forehead. Silence. The researchers gasped. One of them nearly fainted. Korixar didn't move. His red eyes narrowed slightly. And then, for the first time, They softened. It was acceptance. Carter exhaled. He had just done something no one else had dared to do. But before anyone could react, a new sound roared through the chamber. Boom! The walls shook. The ground trembled. A distant explosion rumbled from above, followed by the sharp sound of weapons fire. One of the researchers checked his communicator. His eyes widened in horror. "We're under attack." Carter turned sharply. "Who?" The researcher's voice trembled. "Pirates. Scavengers. They must have been tracking us. They want the war dog." More explosions echoed from above. The attackers were closing in fast. Panic spread through the research team. "We have to run," someone shouted. But Carter didn't move. He turned back to Korixar. The war beast's eyes were brighter now, more focused. He had heard everything. He understood what was happening. For the first time in centuries, he was free. Carter saw the realization dawn in the massive creature's eyes. "You want to fight?" Carter asked, a slow grin forming on his face. Korixar's massive form straightened. His claws flexed, his body tensed. And then, with a deep, growling voice, he gave his answer. "Yes." Carter's grin widened. "Then let's give them one." As the first shots rang through the ruins, Carter and Korixar stood side by side. One human, one ancient war beast. The battle was about to begin. The ruins of HFY shook as explosions thundered across the surface. Dust and debris rained down from the crumbling ceiling, and the distant sound of gunfire echoed through the ancient halls. The research team was in a panic, shouting orders and scrambling for cover. But Lieutenant David Carter wasn't running. He stood beside the massive war beast, Korixar, who had just been freed from centuries of captivity. The biomechanical titan flexed his powerful limbs, claws scraping against the stone floor. His red eyes gleamed with newfound purpose. The pirates had come to take him. They would soon learn what a terrible mistake they had made. Carter checked his weapon, a compact pulse rifle. It was loaded, but he only had a few magazines. Against a full pirate squad. Not enough. He glanced up at Korixar. "You ready for this?" The war dog let out a deep growl, one that made the walls tremble. "I was made for battle." Carter grinned. "Good. Then let's give them hell." The attack begins. The first wave of pirates burst into the chamber, weapons raised. They were a ragtag mix of alien mercenaries, tall insectoid raiders, bulky reptilian brutes, and sleek feline-like sharpshooters. Their leader, a scared alien with cybernetic implants, pointed at Korixar. "That war dog is worth a fortune. Stun it, kill the human." Carter didn't wait. He opened fire. His first shots took down 2 pirates before they could react. The rest dove for cover, returning fire. Energy blasts lit up the dark chamber, striking ancient pillars and sending chunks of stone flying. But the real nightmare was Korixar. With a single, earth-shaking leap, the war beast charged forward. His claws ripped through armor, sending pirates flying like ragdolls. His massive tail swept through the ranks, knocking them down like dominoes. One pirate tried to fire a heavy cannon at Korixar. The war beast lunged, jaws snapping shut around the weapon. With a sickening crunch, he bit it in half and threw the pirate aside like a broken doll. The pirates had expected an old, broken relic. Instead, they had awakened a living storm. Back-to-back battle. Carter dodged behind a fallen column as plasma bolts sizzled past him. He peeked out, fired a few shots, and ducked again. "Korixar, we need to thin their numbers fast." The war beast snarled, then suddenly lifted one of the dead pirates with his massive claws. With a powerful throw, he sent the body crashing into a group of enemies, knocking them down like bowling pins. Carter whistled. "I like your style." Korixar let out a deep chuckle, a sound Carter hadn't expected but found strangely comforting. More pirates poured into the chamber. They were better armed now, carrying heavy pulse cannons and shock grenades. Carter's rifle beeped. A warning. Low ammo. Not good. A pirate aimed a grenade launcher straight at him. Carter knew he wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Then, a massive shadow leaped over him. Core XR slammed into the pirate, knocking him flat before the grenade could fire. The war beast's massive claws crushed the launcher like paper. Carter exhaled. "Remind me to buy you a drink after this." Core XR didn't understand the joke, but he simply growled, standing protectively in front of Carter. The turning point. The pirate leader, the scared alien with cybernetic implants, realized his men were losing. His forces were scattered, their morale crumbling. With a frustrated growl, he activated his communicator. "Deploy the heavy mech. Crush them both." Carter's stomach twisted. Heavy mech. That doesn't sound good. A loud metallic stomp echoed through the ruins. Then another, and another. From the dark hallway, a massive war machine stepped forward. A towering 8-foot battle mech, armed with twin plasma cannons and thick armor plating. Its glowing red visor locked onto Core XR and Carter. Target acquired. Then it opened fire. Carter barely had time to dive for cover before the first blast shattered a nearby wall. Dust and flames erupted into the air. Core XR didn't flinch. Instead, he let out a deep, rumbling growl, a sound full of challenge. Carter peeked over his cover. "Tell me you have a plan." Core XR crouched low, his massive muscles tensing. "I do." Then he charged. The fall of the mech. The battle mech fired again, its twin cannons lighting up the chamber. But Core XR was too fast. He dodged left, then right, weaving between the blasts with terrifying agility for something his size. Then, with a powerful leap, he landed on top of the mech. The pirates gasped in horror as the war beast sank his claws deep into the machine's armored plating. Sparks flew. Metal screeched. The mech pilot screamed inside. "Get it off. Get it off." Core XR roared, his eyes blazing with fury. With one final, earth-shaking bite, he ripped the mech's power core out and flung it to the ground. The machine shuddered. Then it collapsed. Silence filled the chamber. The surviving pirates ran. They had seen enough. No amount of money was worth facing this. Carter stood slowly, brushing dust off his armor. He looked at Core XR, who stood over the wrecked mech, chest heaving. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Carter chuckled. "Yeah, definitely buying you a drink." Core XR let out a deep, amused huff. The battle was over. But the war had just begun. The ancient ruins of HFY were silent once more. Smoke drifted through the air, mixing with the scent of burnt metal and scorched stone. The last echoes of battle had faded, and the only sounds now were the distant crackling of fire and the heavy breathing of Lieutenant David Carter and Core XR. The war beast stood tall over the wreckage of the defeated mech, his red eyes still glowing with the heat of battle. His massive body was covered in dust and scratches, but he barely seemed to notice. Carter wiped sweat from his forehead and looked around. The pirate survivors had fled, leaving their fallen behind. The research team, who had been hiding during the fight, was now slowly emerging from their cover. Dr. Vreelich, the lead scientist, stepped forward cautiously. His reptilian face was still pale with fear. I cannot believe we survived." Carter smirked. "Yeah, you're welcome." Vrelich's eyes darted nervously to Core XR. And the war beast. Core XR's head turned slightly, fixing the alien scientist with an unreadable gaze. The researchers still feared him. He could see it in their eyes. They saw him as a weapon, a tool of destruction. But Carter saw something else. The lieutenant sighed and crossed his arms. "He just saved all of us. Show some respect." The researchers hesitated. They had spent years studying the Stalzer war beasts in history logs. Every record described them as mindless engines of destruction. But now, standing before a living legend, they weren't sure what to believe. Core XR remained silent. Carter turned to him. "You okay?" The war beast let out a deep rumble, almost like a sigh. I am free. He lifted his massive clawed hand, flexing it as if feeling the weight of his own body for the first time in centuries. But I do not know my purpose anymore. Carter frowned. What do you mean? Kor Exard looked around the battlefield. The fallen pirates, the destroyed mech, the smoking ruins. His voice was quieter now. I was created for war. I was built to fight, to conquer, to destroy. His red eyes met Carter's. But the war I was made for ended long ago. My masters are gone. My enemies are dust. So tell me, human, what am I now? Carter didn't answer right away. He understood what Korexar was feeling. He had seen soldiers struggle with the same question when wars ended. Some found new paths, new reasons to keep going. Others didn't. Carter glanced at the wreckage of the pirate mech. You're more than just a weapon. Korexar tilted his head. Am I? Carter nodded. You chose to fight for us. No one forced you. You could have killed me the moment you woke up, but you didn't. That means something. Korexar was silent for a long moment. Then he rumbled softly. Perhaps I need a new war, a new threat. Before Carter could respond, a loud beeping came from his wrist communicator. He frowned and tapped the screen. A distorted voice crackled through the static. Carter, this is Commander Briggs. Do you read? Carter's heart leaped. Briggs was his superior officer. If he was contacting them now, something was wrong. I read you, sir, Carter replied. We ran into pirates, but we took care of them. What's going on? Briggs' voice was tense. We have a bigger problem. A Xalzur war fleet just came out of deep space near Vorak 5. The air suddenly felt colder. Carter's stomach twisted. That's impossible. The Xalzur were wiped out centuries ago. Briggs' voice was grim. Looks like someone didn't get the memo. Their ships are old, but they're operational. And they're heading straight for your location. Carter's pulse quickened. How long until they get here? Less than an hour. Carter cursed under his breath. The research team began to panic. A Xalzur fleet. But that means they're coming for him, Carter finished, looking up at Korexar. The war beast's red eyes flickered with something unreadable. My kind. Briggs continued. We don't know if they're remnants of the old empire or a new faction trying to revive it. But we do know this. They're heavily armed, and if they find that war beast, they'll take him. Carter's jaw clenched. He wasn't about to let that happen. We need extraction. We're sending a dropship, but it won't get there before they do. Briggs hesitated. Carter, listen to me. If the Xalzur see Korexar as a lost asset, they'll do anything to reclaim him. Carter turned to Korexar. They're coming for you. What do you want to do? The war beast's expression hardened. He looked toward the distant sky, where dark shadows of incoming ships were beginning to appear. For centuries, he had been a forgotten relic of the past. Now his past was coming back for him. His next words were filled with quiet determination. I will not be their slave again. Carter smirked. Good answer. He checked his rifle. Then we fight. Korexar let out a deep, rumbling growl. Yes, we fight. The research team scrambled to gather their equipment. The sound of approaching engines grew louder. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The ground trembled as the first Xalzur warships broke through the clouds. Their sleek black hulls shimmered with ancient energy, and their glowing red insignias pulsed like living veins. The sight sent a chill down Carter's spine. The Xalzur Empire was supposed to be dead. Yet, here they were, coming for their lost war beast. Carter checked his pulse rifle. We're outnumbered and outgunned. That's a bad combination. Korexar stood beside him, his massive form like a stone fortress against the wind. His red eyes were locked onto the approaching ships, his claws flexing. I do not fear them. Carter smirked. Yeah, well, I'd be worried if you did. The research team was scrambling to pack up their equipment. Dr. Vrillich's claws trembled as he fumbled with his datapad. "We must escape. We cannot fight the Exalzer." Carter shook his head. "Running isn't an option. Their ships are too fast." A loud thud interrupted them. The Exalzer drop pod slammed into the ruins, sending dust and debris flying. The hatch hissed open, and towering figures emerged. Exalzer warriors in black armor, their weapons humming with energy. Their leader stepped forward, his red eyes locking onto Korexar. Unlike the others, he was not fully organic. Half of his body was enhanced with cybernetics. His voice was deep and mechanical. "Designation: Korexar. You belong to the Exalzer. Submit." Korexar didn't move. Carter aimed his rifle. "Yeah, that's not happening." The Exalzer leader tilted his head. "Human interference is irrelevant. Stand aside." Carter's grip tightened. "You really don't know humans, do you?" Without warning, Korexar lunged. The war beast slammed into the Exalzer leader, claws tearing through metal and flesh. Sparks and blood flew as the cybernetic warrior staggered back, his systems glitching. Carter fired his rifle, hitting 2 Exalzer soldiers before diving behind a fallen pillar. Plasma bolts zip. It passed him, scorching the stone. "Get to cover," he yelled to the research team. The ruins exploded into battle. A fight against the past. Korexar fought like a force of nature. He ripped through the Exalzer soldiers with terrifying speed, his claws tearing through armor as if it were paper. The warriors tried to restrain him with energy cables, but he snapped them like thread. Carter took down another enemy with a clean headshot. They just keep coming. More Exalzer drop pods crashed around them, releasing reinforcements. The soldiers moved with unnatural coordination, like they were being controlled by something larger. Then, Carter saw it. Hovering above the battlefield was a dark, mechanical sphere, its surface covered in shifting red symbols. It pulsed every time that Exalzer soldiers moved. A command unit. Carter realized the truth. They're not just soldiers. They're being controlled. Korexar turned, his eyes locking onto the sphere. His expression darkened. "I know what that is." The control core. The Exalzer leader, still standing despite his injuries, let out a robotic snarl. "You were made to serve, Korexar. We will restore you." Korexar's growl rumbled through the ruins. "No, I was made to destroy." With one mighty leap, Korexar launched himself at the floating command sphere. The Exalzer warriors suddenly froze, as if waiting for new orders. Carter seized the opportunity. "Take them down now." The remaining researchers, finally understanding what was happening, grabbed weapons from the fallen pirates and opened fire. Plasma bolts and pulse rounds cut through the enemy, forcing them back. Korexar reached the sphere, digging his claws into its metallic shell. The machine shuddered, red lights flickering in panic. "Korexar, cease. You are Exalzer property." The war beast's eyes glowed brighter. His voice was calm, but full of rage. "Not anymore." With a final bone-crushing bite, Korexar ripped the core apart. The Exalzer soldiers collapsed mid-step, their bodies lifeless. Whatever controlled them was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield. Carter let out a slow breath. "You really don't hold back, do you?" Korexar looked at the wreckage in his claws. "They tried to control me again. I will not allow it." The truth revealed. Carter stepped forward. "How did you know about the sphere?" Korexar hesitated. Then he spoke. "Because it controlled me once." Carter's stomach dropped. "You were one of them." Korexar nodded. "All war beasts were. We were not just warriors. We were machines of war, programmed to fight without thought. The command core was our master." He clenched his claws. But something happened. I do not remember how, but I broke free. "And now I will never return." Carter nodded. "Then we make sure they never come for you again." Above them, the remaining Exalzer ships hesitated. Without their soldiers, they had lost control of the battle. They slowly began to retreat into orbit. Carter tapped his communicator. "Briggs, the Axal-Zur are pulling back. You better get that dropship down here before they change their minds." Briggs' relieved voice came through. "On our way." Core XR looked to the sky. "They will come again." Carter smirked. "Then we'll be ready." As the dropship engines roared in the distance, Carter glanced at Core XR. "You ever think about what comes after war?" The war beast was silent for a moment. Then, for the first time, he smiled. "Perhaps I will learn." The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Lieutenant David Carter stood at the edge of the ruined battlefield, watching as the dropship descended. The engines roared, kicking up dust and debris. The research team was already boarding, eager to leave the dangerous planet behind. Core XR, the ancient Axal-Zur war beast, stood beside him, his red eyes scanning the sky. The retreating Axal-Zur warships were now distant shadows, but Carter knew this wasn't the end. The enemy would return. Carter turned to Core XR. "So what now?" The war beast didn't answer immediately. His massive claws flexed as he stared at the broken remains of the control core, the machine that once enslaved him. "For centuries, I was a weapon," Core XR rumbled. "Now, I do not know what I am." Carter nodded. "Yeah, I've seen a lot of soldiers struggle with that." Core XR tilted his head. "You compare me to your kind." Carter smirked. "You fight, you bleed, and you ask what comes after war. Sounds pretty human to me." For the first time, Core XR let out a deep, rumbling chuckle. A difficult decision. As they boarded the dropship, Commander Briggs' voice crackled through Carter's communicator. "Carter, I need a status update. Did you secure the asset?" Carter looked at Core XR. "Asset?" He didn't like the sound of that. "Yeah, we've got him. We're heading back now." "Good. We need to talk once you're back on the ship." Carter frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. The dropship took off, leaving the ruins of Vorak 5 behind. Through the viewport, Carter watched the planet shrink as they entered space. Core XR sat near the back of the ship, silent, lost in thought. Something about this didn't sit right. The truth from command. When they arrived at the fleet's main ship, Carter and Core XR were taken straight to the command center. The air was tense. Officers moved quickly, exchanging data reports on the Axal-Zur fleet's retreat. Commander Briggs stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Carter, you did good out there." Carter nodded. "Thanks, sir. But something tells me this isn't just a debrief." Briggs exhaled. "It's not. High Command has reviewed the data from Vorak 5. They're concerned." Core XR's red eyes flickered. "Concerned? About me?" Briggs hesitated before answering. "Yes." He tapped a console, and a holographic report appeared. "The Axal-Zur aren't extinct. We don't know how many are out there, but if they're coming back, we need to prepare." Carter crossed his arms. "And?" Briggs' voice became firm. "High Command wants Core XR to be contained." Carter's stomach tightened. "What?" Briggs didn't look pleased either. "They see him as a risk, a living war machine created by the Axal-Zur. They don't trust him." Core XR growled lowly, his claws digging into the floor. "I have no master." Briggs gave him a measured look. "I believe that. But others don't. They want him under surveillance, maybe even put into stasis." Carter gritted his teeth. "That's not happening." Briggs sighed. "Carter." "No." Carter stepped in front of Core XR. "He fought with us. He saved us. He has a right to choose his own path." Silence filled the room. Then Core XR spoke. "What if I leave?" Briggs raised an eyebrow. "You mean go into hiding?" Core XR's eyes gleamed. "If I stay, I will always be seen as a weapon. If I go, perhaps I can be something else." Carter frowned. "Where would you even go?" The war beast was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Carter. "Come with me." Carter blinked. "Wait. What?" "You have fought beside me. You do not fear me. If I am to find a new path, I would trust no one else to guide me." Briggs looked at Carter. "That's a hell of a choice, Lieutenant." Carter looked between his commander and the war beast. Staying meant following orders. Leaving meant stepping into the unknown, alongside a creature who was once feared across the galaxy. Then he grinned. "Yeah, it is." He turned to Corexar. "Let's go find out what's waiting for you out there." Corexar's eyes gleamed as the alarms in the command center blared, signaling the Xalzur's next move. Carter knew one thing. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, Corexar had a choice. The stars stretched endlessly before them as Carter and Corexar sat in the cockpit of their stolen transport ship. The Void Strider was an old but sturdy vessel, barely holding together after a quick escape from the fleet. Carter adjusted the controls, guiding them toward the uncharted sectors of the galaxy. Corexar sat in silence, staring at the vastness of space. His red eyes reflected the soft glow of distant stars. "You regret leaving?" Carter asked, his hand steady on the controls. Corexar rumbled low in his chest. "No, but the Xalzur will not stop." Carter exhaled. "Yeah, I figured." Before they could speak further, the ship's sensors blared an alert. "Incoming vessels." Carter's stomach tightened. "Don't tell me." The display confirmed his worst fear. Xalzur warships. They had been waiting. A fight they couldn't run from. The Void Strider shook violently as energy blasts struck the hull. Carter gritted his teeth and pulled the controls hard to the right. "They're locking weapons. We need a plan. Fast." Corexar's claws flexed. "We fight." Carter scoffed. "With what? This ship barely has working thrusters." Corexar's eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching warships. Then he turned to Carter. "Ram their command ship." Carter blinked. "That's not a plan. That's suicide." Corexar's gaze did not waver. "The Xalzur cannot afford to lose another command unit. If we take it out, the others will retreat." Carter hesitated. It was crazy. It was reckless. It was their only chance. "All right, big guy," Carter muttered, gripping the controls tighter. "Let's crash a ship." The final stand. The Void Strider accelerated, barreling straight toward the Xalzur command ship. The enemy vessels realized the plan too late. Warning sirens blared across the fleet. Xalzur warships moved to intercept, but Corexar leaped from the cockpit, grabbing hold of a manual turret. His massive claws ripped the controls apart, overriding the system. Carter watched in awe as Corexar aimed and fired with deadly precision. Plasma bolts tore through enemy fighters, forcing them back. The command ship loomed closer. Carter took a deep breath. Brace for impact. The Void Strider collided with the enemy flagship's hull, tearing through its exterior plating. The ship shuddered violently, explosions erupting in the corridors. Carter and Corexar jumped from the wreckage just in time, landing inside the burning remains of the Xalzur command center. A war beast's wrath. Xalzur warriors stormed the corridors, weapons raised. Corexar roared, his claws flashing in the firelight. The soldiers hesitated for just a second. A fatal mistake. Corexar was unstoppable. He tore through their ranks with a ferocity that shook the entire ship. Sparks flew as metal armor crumpled beneath his claws. Carter moved quickly, using his rifle to pick off enemies from behind cover. "We need to get to the control core." Corexar nodded, his path clear. The ship's core pulsed at the heart of the command deck, its red glow illuminating the dark chamber. But standing in their way was a towering figure, the Xalzur Overlord. Half organic, half machine, the Overlord's crimson eyes locked onto Corexar. "You are broken," the Overlord growled. "Return to the fold." Corexar snarled. "I was never yours." The two collided like titans. The Overlord struck with deadly precision, his cybernetic limbs enhanced with plasma energy. Core XR dodged, his instincts sharper than ever. Carter fired at the Overlord's weak spots, forcing him to slow down. Big guy, anytime now. With one final mighty strike, Core XR sank his claws into the Overlord's chest, ripping out his cybernetic core. The Overlord's red eyes flickered. Impossible. Then he collapsed. A new beginning. The command ship shook violently as the control core overloaded. The remaining Zalzur forces, without leadership, began their retreat. Carter grabbed Korgzar's arm. "We need to go. Now." They sprinted toward the nearest escape pod. The doors sealed behind them just as the flagship erupted into a fireball, breaking apart in space. The pod shot through the wreckage, tumbling toward an unknown planet. Inside, Carter leaned back, catching his breath. Well, that was fun. Core XR exhaled slowly. The Zalzur are broken. For now. Carter chuckled. And we're alive. That's what matters. Core XR turned to him. What now? Carter smirked. Now, we see what's next. As the escape pod drifted toward the surface of a new world, a future beyond war awaited them. For the first time in his existence, Core XR was free.